Okay, for the next 5 minutes, we are going to discuss our learning intention, which is I will be able to identify plot elements using textual evidence to create a story map. You might ask, what is a story map? Most maps we think of as a map of a place. My map that I draw is going to look a little bit like a mountain. Some people refer to it as the story mountain, but this can be applied to almost any work of fiction, whether it be a short story or a longer novel. And there are 5 specific parts to the development of a story. The first part is referred to as exposition. I'm going to drop a few big words on you, so I apologize in advance. The first part of the story map is exposition. That's the part where you lay out the groundwork for your story. So you're going to be concerned with introducing one or maybe a few characters. You're going to describe the setting, where the story takes place and when. And you're going to set up the scene. Okay, you're going to set the scene for the story. Okay. The first thing that makes a story work is some sort of friction or some sort of a problem. That problem, and there might be more than one in a story or a novel, but that problem we call conflict. Okay. So while this is not one of the stages, somewhere early on in the story, we are going to be presented with a conflict. Now this can be either an internal conflict, that is, the central character is struggling with something inside them, something they have to overcome, or it could be what is called an external conflict. That is, it's a conflict with someone else out there or with nature. So those are the 2 types of conflict. We'll talk more about those and talk about some examples in some of the stories that we've read and that we'll read in the upcoming weeks. Okay. So anyway, what you have on this side of the mountain, this is usually the majority of the story is climbing up this mountain. Okay, and we call that the rising action. Okay, so at a certain point in the story goes along, things happen. He or she, the central character or protagonist, may advance towards resolving the conflict, but along the way, things get more complicated, things might get more tense, until it reaches a point of ultimate friction, where that would be the high point of the story, and we call that the climax. Okay? So that is when everything comes to a head, when everything, mounts to the most, a lot of times it's the most active part of the story, it's the most, where you're just like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And then after the climax, you have the falling action of the story. This is, if you've ever heard, it's a lot easier to go back down a mountain than to climb up a mountain. Okay, so this happens very quickly a lot of times. And this we call the falling action. Sometimes it might only be, a few lines or a short part of the book. And then finally, we have the resolution, which is how things are resolved at the end of the story. And what, they might explain in a fairy tale, it's the part where they say, and then they lived happily ever after. Okay? Another term, this is another term I want you guys to remember that sort of means the same thing as resolution. It's a French word. It's often applied to drama, like stage plays, movies. That is called the denouement. You all say denouement. Denouement. Good. Very good. It's a little bit weird because it doesn't doesn't sound like how it's spelled, okay? So we can take, like I said, we can take almost any story and apply this to it. What we're going to do is I'm going to give you an exit ticket. On the exit ticket, you'll simply have a sheet of paper. It will already have the story map drawn for you. And you are going to have a few slips of paper that tell you about certain parts of the story, okay? This is the story that we read last week, The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, okay? So we're just simply analyzing the story based on this plot map, and you will paste those slips of paper to the different parts according to where you think they fit. And that should just take a couple minutes, and that'll be your exit for the day. Thank you.